Welcome back to Sportsbook Review Videos. I hope you all are enjoying the NBA All-Star break, as of course games will tip back off next week. However, it is time to take a look at the halfway point playoff predictions here from Bet365. They have a really good playoff predictor model, gives you an odds chance of teams to make the playoffs. And of course, we have some teams that are already locked in, of course, to make the playoffs. So what about some of those teams that could make a jump, potentially make a trade here also in the last week of before the trade deadline, which could really improve not only their playoff chances, but their NBA championship chances as well. Of course, we'll start off with the locks to make the playoff. Really no surprise here in the Eastern Conference that the Cavaliers and the Raptors are virtual locks. 100% playoff chances to make it here. Of course, the Celtics and the Hawks actually right behind them, too, with chances of just above 89%. So you're looking at those four teams as potential playoff locks. Of course, the Hawks not really as a steady team as they were last year. They could be looking to sell off some pieces at the deadline, but the Celtics, I think, are where you need to look at here in the Eastern Conference. There have been talks of a Carmelo Anthony, Kevin Love trade here with a three-way trade with the Knicks, Celtics, and Cavaliers, which would put Kevin Love in Boston. That would be a huge boost to their potential chances of actually knocking off a team like the Raptors or the Cleveland as well. Maybe not the piece they need, but definitely a piece they need to at least compete and potentially get to an Eastern Conference Finals as well. So keep an eye out on the Celtics here. There are definitely teams that could be a team that could be a buyer at the deadline, could really improve their playoff chances and their championship odds as well. In the West, the Thunder, Spurs, Clippers, and of course the Warriors are all virtual locks to make the playoffs as well. Really, the only thing that's going to derail the Warriors, I think, at this point as the championship favorite is an injury, God forbid. But Spurs, I think, didn't really show much in their first meeting. I think they'll be a very formidable foe as well. So not so much a lock, I think, here to win the Western Conference of the Warriors, but very, very close to it at this point. And we have some maybes here, teams that are falling kind of right in the could be in, could be out type of range here. In the West, it regards around teams like the Mavericks, the Utah Jazz, and the Memphis Grizzlies. All have solid chances according to Basketball Reference, but the Grizzlies will, of course, be without Marc Gasol basically for the rest of the season. That really hurts their playoff chances. I think they could be a little bit overvalued in that aspect as well from Basketball Reference right now. In the Eastern Conference, you have about five teams that are kind of bunched up in between the 60 to 80% mark when it comes to playoff probability. If the Pacers, Heat, Hornets, Pistons, and Bulls are all kind of locked right into that range. And one of those teams might not make the playoffs here, as that would end up being 9 total from what I've mentioned of the locks so far, the Eastern Conference. Right now, the Pistons are the team on the outside looking in, but it could very easily be the Bulls. Maybe the Hornets fall off and get injured a little bit more as well. So not a whole lot of locks between these five teams, but all five could end up making the playoffs here if one of those top tier teams, like the Hawks, for instance, starts selling off pieces at the deadline and choose to rebuild instead of be one of the middle tier seeds in the Eastern Conference right now. The long shots we'll start it off in the Eastern Conference, where the Wizards and the Magic are basically the only two teams with any sort of long shot chances to make the playoffs there. Magic probably a little bit better chances than the Wizards right now, just because they think they have a better team, much better defense as well. But still, they're I think about 3.5, 4.5 out of the playoffs right now as we stand now. And really, the only two long shots in the Western Conference are the Rockets and the Kings. Now, of course, the Rockets will probably still make it, but what if they sell off Dwight Howard at the deadline, which has been rumored basically for the last 2 months? And the Kings' really only chances right now is if they start playing better like they were at the beginning of the season. They're still 4.5 out as well from that 8 seed. Going to be very hard for them to climb back in it, but even if they do make the playoffs, they have to consider that they'll lose their draft pick this year. So that is also something to consider here for the Sacramento Kings if you have any action on them to make the playoffs this season. But that'll do it for me this time. Make sure to continue to check out some of my other NBA halfway point previews and predictions here as we head back into action next week. But until then, for Sportsbook Review, I'm Jordan Sharp.